Welcome to the deep dive. When you think about putting money into real estate in Thailand, um, two places probably jump right out. The big city, Bangkok, and then that beautiful island, Phuket.
Exactly. And maybe let's get this out of the way first. It's Phuket.
Yes, Phuket. Definitely not Phuket. We need to stress that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And look, to help us really get into the differences and similarities today, we're actually leaning on some great insights from an article by Ocean Worldwide.
Ocean Worldwide. Yeah, they really know their stuff, don't they? Based in Phuket since, what, 2004?
That's right, 2004. And they specialize in luxury residential real estate, not just in Phuket, but Koh Samui too. Sandra O'Neill, the director there, she's got, well, decades of experience, helped tons of investors and families.
So a really solid source, especially for the Phuket side of things, particularly that high-end market they focus on.
Definitely. It gives us a really valuable perspective when we compare it to Bangkok, which is, a whole different beast, a massive urban center, different economic drivers entirely compared to Phuket's more laid-back, tourism-driven feel.
Right. So maybe you're thinking about long-term growth in the capital, or maybe those potentially high rental yields in a tropical spot sound tempting. Our goal here is to sort of unpack all that for you.
Yeah, just lay out the facts, the trends, so you can make a more, well, informed choice about what fits your investment goals.
Okay, let's jump in then. Bangkok versus Phuket. What's the real investment potential look like on the ground?
Well, let's start with Bangkok. The info we've got really points to it being a strong candidate for long-term investment.
Why is that mainly?
It seems to be largely down to the constant development, urban expansion, and especially the big investments in infrastructure. Think transport links, the BTS, MRT extensions, that kind of thing tends to support property values over time.
And there's a lot of choice too, right? It's not just one type of property.
Well, no, exactly. You've got everything from super modern condos right in the thick of it to, more traditional houses further out. So it caters to different budgets, different investment levels.
And demand seems pretty consistent.
Yeah, the source mentions steady growth in demand, something like 5% annually. That points towards a market that's, well, pretty stable.
Okay, and what about specific areas? The article mentioned some hotspots.
It did. Sukhumvit gets a big mention, always popular with expats, lots of condos near international schools. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got Salamasathorn, the business hubs. Lots of demand there for, like, upscale apartments for professionals.
Right, the CBDs.
And also Thonglor and Ekamai were highlighted. Trendy spots, attracting more expats, good mix of modern condos, townhouses.
And even Old Town for something different.
Yeah, for character properties, charming older buildings, maybe a different investment angle, but definitely part of the mix. It's really diverse.
Okay, numbers. What about rental yields in Bangkok?
The average is cited between 4% and 6% annually. But obviously that's an average. It really depends where exactly you buy and what kind of place it is.
Sure, location, 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 and appreciation.
Over the past decade, Central Bangkok's seen average property value appreciation around 5% per year. That's a pretty solid track record for long-term capital growth.
And they even gave some price benchmarks per square meter.
They did. Gives you a rough idea.
Mhm.
Sukhumvit's around 250,000 Thai baht per square meter. Sathorn, maybe 280,000. Siloam, 260,000. Thonglor, 240,000. And Riverside actually topping that list at about 300,000.
Wow, Riverside Premium.
Yeah. And interestingly, high-rise condos, apparently they make up something like 70% of what foreign buyers purchase, especially in those core areas like Sukhumvit and Sathorn.
Okay, that gives a really good picture of Bangkok. Solid, diverse, steady growth. Now let's pivot to Phuket, and let's tap into that Ocean Worldwide expertise. What's the investment scene like there?
Well, Phuket, especially through the lens of someone like Ocean Worldwide, who's deep in that market, is really known for its potential for higher rental yields.
Driven by tourism, I assume. Short-term lets.
Absolutely. That's the main engine. The island's huge popularity as a holiday spot means there's this, constant flow of potential tenants looking for vacation rentals.
And Ocean Worldwide focuses on the luxury end, right? So that part of the market is doing well.
Exactly. The article points to a rise in luxury developments catering specifically to wealthier tourists and expats. And yes, that aligns perfectly with Ocean Worldwide's niche. They know that segment inside out.
Good to know. And are property values going up there too?
Yes, the source indicates that property values are increasing in Phuket as well, making it look like a good investment location overall.
Any specific trends within the Phuket market?
One interesting thing mentioned is the move towards eco-friendly developments, properties with solar panels, green building practices. That seems to be appealing to a certain type of uh, conscious investor.
That makes sense tapping into that global trend. Any notes of caution, though?
Well, yeah, the article does suggest that while luxury properties seem to be performing well, the mid-range condo market might be a bit tougher, maybe more competition.
So location becomes even more critical.
Absolutely crucial. The advice is to really focus on prime spots, places like Bang Tao or Kamala, if you're looking for the best chance of both appreciation and strong rental income.
And the potential yields there, you said higher, but what's the range?
It's quite a wide range, actually, from about 3.7% at the lower end up to potentially 11.4%.
Wow, 11.4% is significant.
It is. But that massive range just underlines how much it depends on the specific property and exactly where it is on the island.
Okay, so Bangkok, steady growth, diverse. Phuket, potential for higher yields, tourism-driven, location is key. What about market stability? How do they compare?
That's a really important point. The info suggests Bangkok has an edge here because its economy is much more diversified.
Right, it's not just relying on one industry.
Exactly. It's got finance, commerce, manufacturing, services,
Yeah.
so it tends to be a bit more resilient if, say, one sector takes a hit.
Whereas Phuket is very heavily tied to tourism.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Which means it's naturally more vulnerable to, external shocks, things like global travel trends, economic downturns affecting holidays, even things like pandemics, as we saw.
So maybe a strategy could be balancing between the two.
That's suggested as a way to potentially mitigate risk, yeah.
Hmm.
You could maybe capture those higher short-term yields in Phuket while also having the anchor of Bangkok's potentially more stable long-term growth.
Diversification again, makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch gears slightly. What about just living there? Cost of living, lifestyle? Are they very different?
Overall, the cost of living is painted as being broadly similar, believe it or not. But there are definitely nuances.
Like what?
Well, in Bangkok, maybe grabbing a simple meal at a cheap place might be, say, a 120, 140 baht. A restaurant meal more like 1,000 baht. The general feel is that day-to-day food, and especially public transport, tend to be a bit cheaper in Bangkok.
Okay. And Phuket?
In Phuket, you can still eat cheaply, of course, but things like imported groceries might cost more just because, well, it's an island. Logistics cost more.
Right.
And if you're doing lots of beach activities, boat trips, that kind of stuff, those costs add up. Accommodation varies a lot, but places like Rawai Beach are mentioned as maybe offering a good mix of accessibility and condo prices.
What about comparing food and transport directly?
Street food's great and affordable in both, but maybe surprisingly, seafood could actually be a bit pricier in Phuket sometimes. And Transport Bangkok wins hands down on public transport. The SkyTrain, the MRT. It's extensive.
Mm.
Phuket relies much more on taxis, songthas, or renting scooters or cars.
That could make a difference to monthly expenses.
For sure. Though interestingly, the info suggests salaries might generally be a bit higher in Bangkok, which could help offset some costs for people working there.
Okay, beyond the money, what about the vibe, the lifestyle, the culture? They must be poles apart.
Oh, completely. Bangkok is just energy. It's this huge, sprawling metropolis, temples next to mega malls, crazy markets, traffic noise, but also incredible food and nightlife. It's intense.
Yeah, a proper 204/7 city.
Definitely. Phuket, on the other hand, is much more laid back. The
Yeah.
whole rhythm is dictated by the sea, the beaches, the natural beauty. It's slower, more relaxed. The focus is very much on that outdoor, tropical lifestyle.
The beach life is the big draw,
Oh,
obviously.
absolutely. Stunning beaches, especially on the west coast, like Patong, Karan, Kata. Great for swimming, sunbathing, water sports. It's world famous for a reason.
And for families, which is better suited.
The general take seems to be that Phuket is often considered more family-friendly. Safer beaches, perhaps a more relaxed atmosphere for kids, lots of outdoor activities.
Bangkok might be a bit much for little ones.
It can be overwhelming, yeah, though it does have parks, museums, amusement parks.
Mm.
But just navigating the city can be intense. Plus, remember Phuket's luxury market? The one Ocean Worldwide knows well? That often attracts expat families, specifically looking for access to good international schools and top-notch medical facilities, which are readily available there, especially catering to that higher-end demographic.
Ah, okay. So the luxury segment supports family infrastructure too.
Exactly. So lifestyle-wise, it really boils down to personal preference.
Mm.
City buzz or island calm.
Makes sense. Okay, let's circle back to the market itself. What are the key trends right now? Maybe some investment strategies.
Right, so for Bangkok, the trend is still very much about expansion tied to infrastructure. Areas with good transport links continue to be in high demand.
Like those we mentioned earlier. So Kumvit, Thonglor.
Yeah, and Thonglor and Ekamai are still highlighted as popular expat zones. Old Town keeps its unique appeal, and that underlying 5% annual demand growth seems pretty consistent.
Okay. And trends in Phuket. Remembering it's Phuket.
Phuket, yeah.
Yes.
Well, we touched on the eco-friendly developments, especially noted in areas like Bang Tao. That seems to be gaining traction. And also the growth of branded residences. These often come bundled with rental management programs, which is a big plus for investors who aren't living there full-time. Makes them more hands-off.
Like a hotel managed apartment, kind of?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Professional management, taking care of bookings, maintenance, cleaning for the rental pool. Very appealing for some.
And tourism's impact. It's huge in Phuket, obviously.
Massive. It directly influences property values and rental demand. The article notes the importance of diversifying Phuket's tourism, maybe attracting different types of visitors to create more stability long-term.
And Bangkok just benefits indirectly from overall tourism to Thailand.
Pretty much. Its economy is much broader, so it's less directly impacted by tourism fluctuations, though it still sees benefits, of course.
So, strategy-wise, is it fair to say Bangkok leans towards long-term hold, Phuket may be more for shorter-term rental focus?
That's broadly how the information positions it, based on the typical returns. Bangkok for steady appreciation over years, Phuket for potentially higher rental income relatively quickly, especially via short lets.
And again, mixing them up could be a strategy.
Yes, diversification across both cities and even different types of properties within them is mentioned as a way to spread risk.
What about managing those risks, like dealing with tenants, property upkeep?
Key points raised are careful tenant screening, especially if you're relying on rental income in Phuket, and proactive property maintenance, which, let's be honest, in a tropical climate like Thailand's, can sometimes require more frequent attention than elsewhere.
Good point. Humidity, rain.
Exactly. And clear communication with your property manager, if you use one, is vital, keeping things running smoothly.
Let's talk numbers again, price to rent ratios. How do they stack up? Lower is better for rental returns, right?
Generally, yes. A lower ratio suggests you might recoup your investment via rent more quickly. So Bangkok city center is around 30, outside the center maybe 28.
Okay. And Phuket?
Phuket is lower, around 25 of the main centers, but potentially dropping to around 16 in areas slightly outside the prime tourist zones.
16. That's quite low. Suggests strong rental potential relative to price in those areas.
Potentially, yes. Faster rental returns might be possible there, according to that metric.
And just to remind ourselves of the yields again.
Bangkok averaged around 4.45%. Phuket, that wider range, 3.7% to potentially 11.4%. But again, averages hide a lot of variation. Location and property type are everything.
Got it. And appreciation drivers. Bangkok is economy and infrastructure.
Right. While Phuket is more linked to tourism trends and that ongoing luxury development push, understanding those different drivers helps you gauge future potential.
Okay, nearly there. Let's tackle the bit everyone probably finds daunting, but is absolutely essential. Legal stuff and taxes.
Yeah, non-negotiable homework, this part. The info stresses how crucial it is to understand Thai property law, because it's likely different from what you're used to back home.
What's the main headline for foreign buyers?
Condos are generally the most straightforward. Foreigners can typically own up to 49% of the unit space in a condo building in their own name freehold.
But not land.
Generally, no. Foreigners can't own land directly. So for houses or villas, the common approach is a long-term leasehold agreement, often for 30 years, usually renewable.
Okay, so leasehold for landed property. And the advice is definitely get a lawyer.
Absolutely, 100%. Get a reputable lawyer who specializes in Thai property law. Don't try to wing it. They are vital for navigating the whole process.
What should that lawyer help with?
Everything, really. Due diligence, making absolutely sure the seller legally owns the property and can sell it. Ensuring contracts are watertight, properly translated, and protect your interests. And making sure the transfer is correctly registered at the land department.
All the official steps to make it legally yours.
Exactly. It's about protecting yourself and your investment.
And taxes. What should investors be aware of?
There are several potential taxes and fees. Things like transfer fees when you buy, stamp duty, possibly a specific business tax depending on how long the seller owned it.
Yeah.
Then there's withholding tax if you're buying from a company.
And if you rent it out,
Then you've got income tax on that rental income. The rules can be complex and rates can change. So again, the strong advice is get professional tax advice specific to your situation.
Makes sense. Don't want any nasty surprises from the tax man later. The info mentions a table with categories like transfer fees, stamp duty, withholding tax. Just flagging them.
Yeah, basically highlighting the main ones to be aware of and factor into your budget, even if the exact rates aren't specified as they can change.
Okay, good overview. So, looking ahead, what's the general feeling about the future for these markets?
For Bangkok, the outlook seems pretty stable, generally positive, driven by that ongoing economic activity and infrastructure push. Seems like a steady course.
And Phuket, more variable because of tourism.
Potentially more variable, yes, that reliance is always there. But, and this ties back to Ocean Worldwide's focus, the luxury end of the market is highlighted as remaining strong and continuing to grow. So there's definite confidence there, especially in that segment.
Any new trends emerging that investors should watch?
In Bangkok, things like co-living spaces are mentioned, and also these big mixed-use developments combining living, working, shopping, leisure, all in one place.
Right, integrated projects.
Yeah. And in Phuket, it's more about that continued push for eco-conscious building and the popularity of those branded residences with the rental management built in.
What about wider economic factors? Any headwinds?
Well, Bangkok still faces infrastructure challenges, like traffic, despite the investment. Phuket, as mentioned, could benefit from diversifying its tourism base. And of course, both are subject to global economic shifts, interest rate changes, government policies. You need to keep an eye on the bigger picture.
Standard investment advice, really. Stay informed.
Exactly. But the overall conclusion seems to be that both markets are expected to grow, suggesting it could still be a pretty good time to consider investing if you do your homework.
So wrapping this up then, it really feels like two quite different propositions, doesn't it? Bangkok offers that steady, long-term potential, the buzz of a major Asian capital.
Right? Stability, city life, diverse economy. And Phuket brings the allure of potentially higher, faster returns driven by tourism, plus that undeniable tropical island lifestyle, especially as we heard from the Ocean Worldwide insights, if you're looking at that luxury end.
So for you listening, the best choice really isn't universal. It truly depends on what you're looking for, your own financial goals, how much risk you're comfortable with, and frankly, what kind of life you want to associate with your investment.
Absolutely. Hopefully this deep dive, using those specific insights, particularly on Phuket from experts on the ground like Ocean Worldwide, has given you a clearer framework to think about it.
Definitely. Both have opportunities, but understanding those key differences is paramount.
Couldn't agree more. Do the research, get good advice.
So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. Considering everything we've discussed, that blend of urban energy versus tropical escape, what kind of return are you really focused on right now? Is it the slow burn of long-term growth or the potentially quicker heat of rental income? Thinking about that might just point you towards your answer in Thailand.